Greetings, this is Andy, and if you're like me, your head starts to wander when you lay down to sleep. Your brain starts going everywhere. Well, here's something to keep your mind occupied. Something nice and uninteresting and boring to keep your mind from going to those places. This is Bedtime Eula, and each week you get to hear a different end-user license agreement, one that you've probably agreed to at some point. So, might as well listen to it anyway, since you're already bound to it. Hopefully you won't make it to the end. At least that's the idea. If you do, put on another one. And if not, just listen to it again. So without further ado, here is the iTunes end-user license agreement from Apple. Apple Incorporated Software License Agreement for iTunes. Please read the software license agreement license carefully before using the Apple software. By using the Apple software, you are agreeing to be bound by the terms of this license. If you do not agree to the terms of this license, do not use the software. If you do not agree to the terms of this license, you may return the Apple software to the place where you obtained it for a refund. If the Apple software was accessed electronically, click Disagree/Decline. For Apple software included with your purchase of hardware, you must return the entire hardware-software package in order to obtain a refund. Important note: to the extent that this software may be used to reproduce materials, it is licensed to you only for the reproduction of non-copyrighted materials, materials in which you own the copyright, or materials you are authorized or legally permitted to reproduce. To the extent that this software may be used for remote access to music files for listening between computers, remote access of copyrighted music is only provided for lawful personal use or as otherwise legally permitted. If you are uncertain about your right to copy or permit access to any material, you should contact your legal advisor. 1. General. The software, documentation, and any fonts accompanying this license, whether on disk, in read-only memory, or any other media, or in any other form, collectively the Apple software, are licensed, not sold, to you by Apple Incorporated, Apple, for use only under the terms of this license, and Apple reserves all rights not expressly granted to you. The rights granted herein are limited to Apple's and its licensors' intellectual property rights in the Apple software and do not include any other patents or intellectual property rights. You own the media on which the Apple software is recorded, but Apple and or Apple's licensors retain ownership of the Apple software itself. The terms of this license will govern any software upgrades provided by Apple that replace and or supplement the original Apple software product, unless such upgrade is accompanied by a separate license, in which case the terms of that license will govern. 2. Permitted license uses and restrictions. A. Subject to the terms and conditions of this license, you are granted a limited, non-exclusive license to install and use the Apple software. To the extent that the Apple software may be used to reproduce materials, such use is limited to reproduction of non-copyrighted materials, materials in which you own the copyright, or materials you are authorized or legally permitted to reproduce. You may not make the Apple software available over a network where it could be used by multiple computers at the same time. You may make one copy of the Apple software in machine-readable form for backup purposes only, provided that the backup copy must include all copyright and other proprietary notices contained on the original, except and only to the extent expressly permitted in this license or by applicable law. You may not copy, decompile, reverse engineer, disassemble, modify, or create derivative works of the Apple software or any part thereof. B. VoiceOver Kit Automatic Updates. When you are using VoiceOver Kit version 1.3, the Apple software will periodically check with Apple for updates to the pronunciation rules used by VoiceOver to generate the spoken items that you hear when you have voiceover selected. If a pronunciation update is available, the update will automatically download onto your computer, and when you have voiceover selected, the new version of the spoken item will be generated and synced to your iPod. The older version of the spoken items will no longer be available. These automatic updates will not change the actual media content, example, music, video, podcast, on your iPod or in your iTunes library. C. Certain components of the Apple software and third-party open source programs included with the Apple software have been or may be available by Apple on its open source website, collectively the open source components. You may modify or replace only these open source components, provided that 1. The resultant modified Apple software is used in place of the unmodified Apple software on a single Apple-labeled computer, and 2. You otherwise comply with the terms of this license and any other applicable licensing terms governing use of the open source components. Apple is not obligated to provide any maintenance, technical, or other support for the resultant modified Apple software. 3. Transfer. You may not rent, license, lend, redistribute, or sublicense the Apple software. You may, however, make a one-time permanent transfer of all your license rights to the Apple software to another party, provided that A. The transfer must include all the Apple software, including all its component parts, original media, if any, printed materials, and this license. B. You do not retain any copies of the Apple software, full or partial, including copies stored on a computer or other storage device. And C. The party receiving the Apple software reads and agrees to accept the terms and conditions of this license. 4. Consent to use of data. A. Diagnostic and usage data. If you choose to allow diagnostic and usage collection, you agree that Apple and its subsidiaries and agents may collect, maintain, process, and use diagnostic, technical, and usage and related information, including but not limited to unique system or hardware identifiers, information about your computer, system and application software, and peripherals, that is gathered periodically to provide and improve Apple's products and services, facilitate the provision of software updates, product support, and other services to you, if any, related to the Apple software, and to verify compliance with the terms of this license. You may change your preferences for diagnostic and usage collection at any time by going to the Diagnostics and Usage setting on your computer and deselecting the checkbox. The Diagnostics and Usage setting is found in the Security and Privacy pane within System Preferences. Apple may use this information as long as it is collected in a form that does not personally identify you for the purposes described above. B. Library data. The Apple software contains features that rely upon information about your iTunes library. If you choose to share information about your iTunes library with Apple, you agree to Apple's and its subsidiaries and agents' transmission, collection, maintenance, processing, and use of this information, including but not limited to artist, album, and song names in your library, to provide and improve such features. You can opt out at any time by going to Preferences for the Apple software and deselecting the corresponding checkbox under Store Preferences. C. Interest-based advertising from iAd. Apple may provide interest-based advertising to you. If you do not want to receive relevant ads in the Apple software, you can opt out by going to the Limit Ad Tracking setting in the Apple software. If you opt out, you will continue to receive the same number of ads, but they may be less relevant because they will not be based on your interests. You may still see ads related to the content in the application or based on other non-personal information. D. Privacy policy. At all times, your information will be treated in accordance with Apple's privacy policy, which is incorporated by reference into this license and can be viewed online. 5. iTunes Store and other services. This software enables access to Apple's iTunes Store, if available, which offers downloads of the music for sale and other services, App Store and other Apple and third-party services, and websites, collectively and individually, services. Such services may not be available in all languages or in all countries. Use of these services requires internet access, and the use of certain services may require an Apple ID, may require you to accept additional terms of service, and may be subject to additional fees. B. By using this software in connection with an Apple ID, iTunes Store account, or iCloud account, you agree to the applicable terms and conditions for that account, such as the latest iTunes Store terms and conditions, which you may access and review online, or the iCloud terms and conditions, which can be found online. If you do not agree to the applicable terms and conditions for such an account, do not use the Apple software in connection with that account. C. You understand that by using any of the services, you may encounter content that may be deemed offensive, indecent, or objectionable, which content may or may not be identified as having explicit language. Nevertheless, you agree to use the services at your sole risk, and that Apple shall have no liability to you for content that may be found to be offensive, indecent, or objectionable. Content types, including genres, subgenres, and podcast categories and subcategories and the like, and descriptions are provided for convenience, and you acknowledge and agree that Apple does not guarantee their accuracy. D. Certain services may display, include or make available content, data, information, applications, or materials from third parties, third-party materials, or provide links to certain third-party websites. By using the services, you acknowledge and agree that Apple is not responsible for examining or evaluating the content, accuracy, completeness, timeliness, validity, copyright compliance, legality, decency, or quality, or any other aspect of such third-party materials or websites. Apple, its officers, affiliates, and subsidiaries do not warrant or endorse and do not assume and will not have any liability or responsibility to you or any other person for any third-party services, third-party materials, or websites, or for any materials, products, or services of third parties. Third-party materials and links to other websites are provided solely as a convenience to you. You agree that you will not use any third-party materials in a manner that would infringe or violate the rights of any other party, and that Apple is not in any way responsible for any such use by you. E. To the extent that you upload any content through the use of these services, you represent that you own all rights in, or have authorized or otherwise legally permitted to upload such content, and that such content does not violate any terms of service applicable to the services. You agree that the services, including but not limited to graphics, audio clips, and editorial content, contain proprietary content, information, and materials that is owned by Apple and or its licensors, and is protected by applicable intellectual property and other laws, including but not limited to copyright. You agree that you will not use such proprietary content, information, or materials other than that permitted use of the services or in any matter that is inconsistent with the terms of this license, or that infringes any intellectual property rights of a third party or Apple. No portion of the services may be reproduced in any form or by any means. You agree not to modify, rent, license, loan, sell, distribute, or create derivative works based on the services in any manner, and you shall not exploit the services in any unauthorized way whatsoever, including but not limited to using the services to transmit any computer viruses, worms, Trojan horses, or other malware, or by trespass or burdening network capacity. You further agree not to use the services in any manner to harass, abuse, stalk, threaten, defame, or otherwise infringe or violate the rights of any other party, and that Apple is not in any way responsible for such use by you, nor for any harassing, threatening, defamatory, offensive, infringing, or illegal messages or transmissions that you may receive as a result of any of these services. F. In addition, services and third-party materials may be accessed from, displayed on, or linked to from the Apple software and are not available in all languages or in all countries or regions. Apple makes no representation that such services and third-party materials are appropriate or available for use in any particular location. To the extent you choose to use or access such services and third-party materials, you do so at your own initiative and are responsible for compliance with any applicable laws, including but not limited to applicable local laws and privacy and data collection laws. Apple and its licensors reserve the right to change, suspend, remove, or disable access to any services at any time without notice. In no event will Apple be liable for the removal of or disabling of access to any such services. Apple may also impose limits on the use of or access to certain services, in any case without notice or liability. 6. Termination. This license is effective until terminated. Your rights under this license will terminate automatically without notice from Apple if you fail to comply with any terms of this license. Upon the termination of this license, you must cease all use of Apple software and destroy all copies, full or partial, of the Apple software. Sections 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, and 12 of this license shall survive any such termination. 7. Disclaimers and warranties. A. If you are a customer who is a consumer, someone who uses the Apple software outside of a trade, business, or profession, you may have legal rights in your country of residence, which will prohibit the following limitations from applying to you, and where prohibited they will not apply to you. To find out more about your rights, you shall contact a local consumer advice organization. B. You expressly acknowledge and agree that, to the extent permitted by applicable law, use of the Apple software and any services performed by or accessed through the Apple software is at your sole risk, and that the entire risk as to the satisfactory quality, performance, accuracy, and effort is with you. C. To the maximum extent permitted by applicable law, the Apple software and services are provided as is and as available, with all faults and without warranty of any kind, and Apple and Apple's licensors, collectively referred to as Apple for the purposes of Section 7 and 8, hereby disclaim all warranties and conditions with respect to the Apple software and services, either express, implied, or statutory, including but not limited to the implied warranties and or conditions of merchantability, satisfactory quality, fitness for a particular purpose, accuracy, quiet enjoyment, and non-infringement of third-party rights. D. Apple does not warrant against interference with your enjoyment of the Apple software and services, that the functions contained in or services performed or provided by the Apple software will meet your requirements, that the operation of the Apple software services will be uninterrupted or error-free, that any services will continue to be made available, that the Apple software services will be compatible or work with any third-party software, applications, or third-party services, or that defects in the Apple software services will be corrected. Installation of this Apple software may affect the usability of third-party software, applications, or third-party services. E. You further acknowledge that Apple software and services are not intended or suitable for use in situations or environments where the failure or time delays of, or errors or inaccuracies in the content, data, or information provided by Apple software or services could lead to the death, personal injury, or severe physical or environmental damage, including, without limitation, the operation of nuclear facilities, aircraft navigation or communication systems, air traffic control, life support or weapon systems. F. No oral or written information or advice given by Apple or an Apple authorized representative shall create a warranty. Should the Apple software services prove defective, you assume the entire cost of all necessary servicing, repair, or correction. Some jurisdictions do not allow the exclusion of implied warranties or limitations on applicable statutory rights of a consumer, so the above exclusion and limitations may not apply to you. 8. Limitation of liability. To the extent not prohibited by applicable law, in no event shall Apple be liable for personal injury or any incidental, special, indirect, or consequential damages whatsoever, including, without limitation, damages for loss of profits, corruption or loss of data, failure to transmit or receive any data or information, business interruption, or any other commercial damages or losses arising out of or related to your use or inability to use the Apple software or services or any third-party software or applications in conjunction with the Apple software or services, however caused, regardless of the theory of liability, contract, tort, or otherwise, and even if Apple has been advised of the possibility of such damages, some jurisdictions do not apply the exclusion or limitation of liability for personal injury or of incidental or consequential damages, so this limitation may not apply to you. In no event shall Apple's total liability to you for all damages, other than as may be required by applicable law in cases involving personal injury, exceed the amount of $50. The foregoing limitations will apply even if the above stated remedy fails or its essential purpose. 9. Export control. You may not use or otherwise export or re-export the Apple software except as authorized by United States law and in the laws of jurisdictions in which the Apple software was obtained. In particular, but without limitation, the Apple software may not be exported or re-exported, A, into any U.S. embargoed countries, or B, to anyone on the U.S. Treasury Department's list of specially designated nationals, or the U.S. Department of Commerce's denied persons list or entity list. By using the Apple software, you represent and warrant that you are not located in any such country or in any such list. You also agree that you will not use the Apple software for any purposes prohibited by United States law, including without limitation the development, design, manufacture, or production of missiles or nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons. 10. Government end users. The Apple software and related documentation are commercial items, as that term is defined at 48 CRF 2.101, consisting of commercial computer software and commercial computer software documentation. As such terms are used in 48 CRF 12.212 or 48 CRF 227.7202 as applicable. Consistent with 48 CRF 12.212 or 48 CRF 227.7202-1 through 227.7202-4 as applicable, the commercial computer software and commercial computer software documentation are being licensed to U.S. government end users, A, only as commercial items, and B, with only those rights as are granted to all other end users pursuant to the terms and conditions herein, unpublished rights reserved under the copyright laws of the United States. 11. Controlling law and severability. This license will be governed by and construed in accordance with the laws of the state of California, excluding its conflict of law principles. This license shall not be governed by the United Nations Convention on Contracts for the International Sale of Goods, the application of which is expressly excluded. If you are a consumer based in the United Kingdom, this license will be governed by the laws of the jurisdiction of your residence. If for any reason a court of competent jurisdiction finds any provision or provision thereof to be unenforceable, the remainder of this license shall continue in full force and effect. 12. Complete agreement governing language. This license constitutes the entire agreement between the parties with respect to the use of the Apple software license herein and supersedes all prior and contemporaneous understandings regarding such matter, with the exception of any additional terms and conditions you are required to accept if you choose to use Apple's online store, which will govern your use of such store and any services you purchase through that store. No amendment to or modification of this license will be binding unless in writing and signed by Apple. Any translation of this language is done for local requirements, and in event of such dispute between the English and any non-English versions, the English version of this license shall govern, to the extent not prohibited by local law in your jurisdiction. 13. Third-party notices. A. Portions of the Apple software utilize or include third-party software and other copyrighted material. Acknowledgments, licensing terms, and disclaimers for such material are contained in the electronic documentation for the Apple software, and your use of such material is governed by their respective terms. B. Use of MPEG-4. This product is licensed under the MPEG-4 Systems Patent Portfolio License for encoding in compliance with the MPEG-4 system standard, except that an additional license and payment of royalties are necessary for encoding in connection with 1. Data stored or replicated in physical media, which is paid for on a title-by-title basis, and or 2. data which is paid for on a title-by-title basis and is transmitted to an end user for permanent storage and/or use. Such additional license may be obtained from MPEG LA Limited License Corporation. See online for additional details. This product is licensed under the MPEG-4 Visual Patent Portfolio License for the personal and non-commercial use of a consumer for 1. Encoding video in compliance with the MPEG-4 Visual Standard, MPEG-4 video, and/or 2. Decoding MPEG-4 video that was encoded by a consumer engaged in a personal and non-commercial activity, and/or was obtained for a video provider licensed by MPEG LA to provide MPEG-4 video. No license is granted or shall be implied for any other use. Additional information, including that related to promotional, internal, and commercial uses, and any licensing may be obtained from MPEG LA LLC. See H.264/AVC notice. To the extent that the Apple software contains AVC encoding and/or decoding functionality, commercial use of H.264/AVC requires additional licensing, and the following provision applies. The AVC functionality in this product is licensed herein only for the personal and non-commercial use of a consumer to 1. Encode video in compliance with the AVC standard, AVC video, and/or 2. Decode AVC video that was encoded by a consumer engaged in a personal or non-commercial activity, and/or AVC video that was obtained from a video provider licensed to provide AVC video. Information regarding other uses and licenses may be obtained from MPEG LA LLC. 14. Third-party software and service terms and conditions. Grace Note in User License Agreement. The application or device contains software from Grace Note, Inc. of Emeryville, California. Grace Note. The software from Grace Note, the Grace Note software, enables this application to perform disk and/or file identification and obtain music-related information, including name, artist, track, and title information, Grace Note data, from online servers or embedded databases, collectively Grace Note servers, and to perform other functions. You may use Grace Note data only by means of the intended end-user functions of this application or device. You agree that you will use Grace Note data, the Grace Note software, and Grace Note servers for your own personal, non-commercial use only. You agree not to assign, copy, transfer, or transmit the Grace Note software or any Grace Note data to any third party. You agree not to use or exploit Grace Note data, the Grace Note software, or Grace Note servers, except as expressly permitted herein. You agree that your non-exclusive license to use the Grace Note data, the Grace Note software, and Grace Note servers will terminate if you violate these restrictions. If your license terminates, you agree to cease any and all use of Grace Note data, the Grace Note software, and Grace Note servers. Grace Note reserves all rights in Grace Note data, the Grace Note software, and the Grace Note servers, including all ownership rights. Under no circumstances will Grace Note become liable for any payment to you for any information that you provide. You agree that Grace Note Inc. may enforce its rights under this agreement against you directly in its own name. The Grace Note service uses a unique identifier to track queries for statistical purposes. The purpose of a randomly assigned numeric identifier is to allow the Grace Note service to count queries without knowing anything about who you are. For more information, see the webpage for the Grace Note privacy policy for the Grace Note service. The Grace Note software and each item of Grace Note data are licensed to you as is. Grace Note makes no representations or warranties, express or implied, regarding the accuracy of any Grace Note data from in the Grace Note servers. Grace Note reserves the right to delete data from the Grace Note servers or to change data categories for any cause that Grace Note deems sufficient. No warranty is made that the Grace Note software or Grace Note servers are error-free or that functioning of Grace Note software and Grace Note servers will be uninterrupted. Grace Note is not obligated to provide you with new, enhanced, or additional data types or categories that Grace Note may provide in the future and is free to discontinue its service at any time. Grace Note disclaims all warranties express or implied, including but not limited to implied warranties of merchantability, fitness, for a particular purpose, title, and non-infringement. GraceNote does not warrant the results that will be obtained by your use of the GraceNote software or any GraceNote server. In no case will GraceNote be liable for any consequential or incidental damages or for any loss of profit or lost revenues. You've made it through Episode 1 of Bedtime Eula. Hopefully, you're asleep and no longer listening. If you are, let's try again next time. Have a good night.